Good afternoon. This is the November 10th, 2021 meeting of the Board of Appeals, hearing, I should say. Scott, would you mind roll call, please?
Kyle Lombardo,
Here.
Tommy Willis,
Here.
Jim McVerter,
Here.
Ron Roque,
Here.
Tricia Hatley,
Here.
Patrice Zimmerman,
Here.
and Ann Weber.
We have a quorum. We have a quorum. So first on the agenda is approval of the minutes for August 11th, 2021 meeting. I assume everybody's received the minutes, has had a chance to review them. Do I hear a motion to accept the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. That was Jim and Ann.
Okay.
Would you like to take a vote?
And Kyle Lombardo,
Here, or you here, yes?
Tommy Willis,
Yes.
Jim McVerter,
Yes.
Ron Roque,
Yes.
Tricia Hatley,
Yes.
Patrice Zimmerman,
Yes.
Ann Weber.
Yes.
I think that was it, right? Did I miss anybody? Okay. All right, motion passes.
We have no new cases, is that correct? So our first case is a continued case. This thing is going to ring on me, isn't it? Our first case is a continued case, case number BOAB 2021-00001. It's the appeal of Matt Thomas, Smith and Pickle, from a decision of the code official for noncompliance with Chapter 3, Section 302.6 in the supplement of the International Existing Building Code 2015 and Chapter 10, Section 1019.3 of the International Building Code 2015, as adopted by Oklahoma City pertaining to required shaft enclosures at 200 Northeast 23rd Street. Can we hear the staff analysis, please?
Okay. So again, the building code, the Board of Appeals involves the IEBC supplement to Section 302.6, which requires that when a permit is required in accordance with Section 105, that that portion of the building should be brought into compliance with Chapters 2 through 33 of the 2015 IBC. In regards to fire protection requirements, including but not limited to fire resistance construction and fire protection systems, et cetera, and IBC 1019.3, which is the other occupancies other than I2 and I3, floor openings containing exit access stairways or ramps that do not comply with one of the following conditions shall be enclosed with a shaft enclosure constructed in accordance with 713. Now the staff analysis is that the applicant's request pertains to the staff's requirement of rated staff enclosure of no less than 1 hour rating as required by code, of which a maximum of only 50% of interior exit stairways are permitted to exit through an atrium. They are seeking relief from those following requirements. Section 1019 as mentioned, and Section 404.10, which is the maximum 50% interior exit stairways exiting through the atrium at level of exit discharge. Also wanted to add on to this as well. This also pertains to Section 10.6.3, which prohibits the means of egress path from traversing more than 2 floors without getting to an exit enclosure. And then also Section 713, which does not allow for openings in a rated exit enclosure. And I'll conclude there with the staff analysis.
So since this is a continuation, I'm going to ask the applicant, if anyone is here, to speak on behalf of the request and tell us what has changed since the last hearing and what new information we need to know.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. So if I might give a little bit of history, just real brief about the application for this variance. Coop Ales is acquiring, or in the process of acquiring, the State Armory at 200 Northeast 23rd. And as part of that project, they've applied for historic tax credits. One of the big things, of course, with historic tax is that methods of the original fabric of the building be preserved. And so one of the things that was discussed was the original stairwells in the building were not enclosed. And so we initially met with Mike Wilson back in November of 2020 and had a brief discussion about the process we could go about considering leaving these stairwells open and not enclosed. And that was what led us to the application of the variance in March of 2021. When we had our last meeting on this, and ultimately it resulted in a continuation, there was a discussion about would the historic tax credits be still approved at the SHPO level. We've since gotten a letter, and that is included in this report for the committee or for the board's review. You might skip that if you don't mind, Scott. And so the request here and all of the engineering and architecture team today is we believe we have, through the efforts of the entire team, come up with a solution that gives an equivalent to the original code, or at least a substitution to it, for the stairwells being enclosed versus being open. Excuse me. So with that, I think it might be useful if there's further questions about that. I can introduce Chris and Ross with Spur Design to speak further on that. But that's basically the summary of where we are in the changes from our last meeting.
So from the last meeting, is there any new information to offer?
There is a letter from the SHPO stating that, might skip one more page, I believe. Keep going. It's the last paragraph of this, that the SHPO believes the proposed item option number 2, utilizing an array of sensors and smoke curtains and exhaust fans, more successfully meets the conditions of the federal government from the standpoint of national preservation. In summary.
So in terms of what you're proposing, though, that has not changed?
That's correct, sir.
You know, I'll be honest with you. If there is no change to what you're proposing, since we offered a continuance so that you could work out a solution with the city, and you're not bringing back a solution, as far as I know, other than what you've proposed before, I don't see any reason to hear anything else other than to just deny. So I'm stating that because I'm going to ask you, have you talked to the city about anything else other than what we've heard in the last meeting?
Anything else?
No, my understanding from our last meeting was that we needed to have SHPO basically deny the glass enclosed stairs, and that's what we needed to bring back to you, and that's what we agreed on.
Okay. And I do accept the fact that you did bring back the letter. That was requested. Thank you. And you haven't had any additional conversations with the fire marshal either?
No.
But if I'm correctly reading the SHPO letter, it doesn't say that. It says that the glass is acceptable. It just says that the solution with no glass is more acceptable. Is that correct?
Now, you had more conversation.
Right.
Will you speak to that?
Yeah, so the glass is still acceptable to SHPO.
That is correct.
Okay.
Mike, does the fire marshal have anything that they want to add to what we've discussed already?
Other than I can't hear, no. I did look through what Scott had said recently, and there was one issue that was brought up in that report, and it talked about the intake air and those doors maybe needing to be tied in so that they would open when before the exhaust fans kick on. It talks about that in there. And so I'd like to, make sure that we address that anyway, if the variance goes through, that we do address that so that the smoke exhaust system will operate the way it's supposed to. I think there are a fairly small number of occupants on the upper floors. We've got the 4 stairs that are around there. So they've got a lot more opportunities or different places to go as far as exits are concerned. And the fire department felt that with the suppression and the smoke control system, that with the report that they provided as far as being able to keep the environment tenable for that evacuation period so people can get out, that was, as far as we were concerned, an acceptable alternative to what the code says.
Was that specifically, did you specifically take into consideration 1006.3 about not having communicating stairs that traverse more than one level?
No, they were really looking at the intent of the code, which is to provide a safe environment for the people for the length of time it takes for them to get out. That's one of the reasons they went from, 1 hour for, a 3-story building to 2 hour for a taller building, is to provide that protected environment for people for that time period so they can get out. This is obviously a historic building, has unique problems as well as good aspects to it, but we feel that the report anyway does take into account different situations and the egress time that it would take to get people out of those areas. And they're in their conclusion, and I'm not a fire protection engineer, and I'm not going to try to design that for them. That's what they hired somebody for. But relying on their professionalism and what they've provided on this report, we feel it's an acceptable alternative.
Scott, and the applicant, can I ask you, when you were considering any of this, regardless of the historic preservation part of it, because, actually, we don't deal with the historic preservation, and they may request something that's, in this case, they are requesting something that is a clear violation of the code, and it's a life safety violation. It's something that's extremely important in terms of the conditions of that building and the people in the building. In some cases, you still have I assume you still have the hotel rooms?
We do, yes.
Right, and people are this is an event location where people will come for weddings or receptions or parties, and they'll stay there and they'll stay in the hotel, correct?
Correct.
A place they're unfamiliar with.
Correct.
They may have been drinking, they may not even be able to wake up during the alarm because they may have been drinking too much.
But what I would like to add to that is that we are currently with the glass enclosure plan, not enclosing all stairwells. By this variance, it would allow us to decrease the path from each of these rooms and eliminate any confusion that might have, even with exit signage and indications. All stairwells will be usable.
But it doesn't offer us a solution for 1006.3, which is very clear in the code. It's black and white. You cannot traverse more than one level in the path of egress, access to an exit. It doesn't even say the exit. It says path to the exit. I mean, and I don't know anywhere else in the code, Mike, you might be able to tell us, but I don't know anywhere else in the code where there's an exception allowed to that anywhere. And as a matter of fact, I will tell you, I've talked to the ICC about this exact condition. In the ICC, that was the only concern they had. So again, you've got somebody who might wake up, they might not wake up due to an alarm, they're in a building they don't know. It might take them more than the few minutes that we've accounted for. And I think that that's why, at least my concern on this board is that we are asking to go ahead and change the code, and we have no authority to do that. That man does. He has the authority to tell you he agrees with you, and he's going to change it. I don't agree with you. I think that that's a very dangerous situation to put some people in, that are transient occupants in a condition where they do not know the building, in a position where they have to do something that's a clear violation of the code. And, you know, and I know that the historic preservation thinks that it would be better to have them open, but I don't think that they are considering the life safety implications in this case.
Chairman, are there available stairwells in this building from the third floor, which versus 2 floors to the first floor?
I really don't know.
I just walked out there, and there seems to be one staircase exit the third floor.
You know, I don't know the floor plan of the building. I really don't. This building isn't being applied for in a change of use occupancy either.
The same
And it's
life
not going
safety
through,
standards and concerns would apply in theory, correct? To present day for occupants of this room during
not,
city council?
they're not obligated to make any changes to this building as long as they're not changing the use of the building and not applying for a permit. You are changing the use of the building, and you're changing, you know, you're applying for a permit, and we're obligated as a board to comply to the code. The code doesn't allow me to give you a change in the code. It allows me to say I agree with the way the city's interpreting things, or I don't agree with the way the city is interpreting things. I agree with the equivalency that the city has accepted. I don't agree with it. That's all I'm allowed to do. That's all this board has the authority to do.
So in a situation where the board would agree to what the fire marshal's reviewers have opined, if you agreed with that, you could technically allow a variance and approve a variance to the code.
The way this board works is we have to have the authority, having jurisdiction, which is the city of Oklahoma City, in agreement with you, that you're willing to do something that they think is an equivalency, and then we vote on whether we, as professionals and other members of the board, believe that it's an equivalency, and that's the way this works.
Okay, I just
And
want to
since,
understand that
and
the
since,
ability exists for you to approve a variance.
oh yeah, we can approve a variance, but it has to be a, you know, something that's presented to us in agreement by the city. Now, since nothing has changed materially, other than we have an opinion that from the SHPO that it would be better to have open stairs, we're still where we were when we continued this case in August. So now if you can come to an agreement with the authority having jurisdiction, the city, and you can get them to agree, you know, if they agree fully, they don't even need to come before this board. They can do it administratively. All I have the ability to do is say I agree with his interpretation or I do not agree with his interpretation. And right now, he's not, and I don't personally, as a member, I don't believe that you are meeting the intent of the code.
And so as we stand here in this room today, it's not the board's opinion that we have an agreement from the city. Does that need to be a document that they provide that says that they would tentatively approve?
Well, the public document says they don't. The public document that's a part of this meeting is the agenda, and it says they do not agree with you.
On the staff analysis.
Staff analysis.
And the staff analysis doesn't even get into 1006.3, and I'd like the architects that are here today to go back and read 1006.3, specifically that paragraph, and look at the last sentence in that paragraph. It's black and white. You cannot traverse more than one level in exit access Doesn't even say inside the exit. I mean, the exit, obviously, when you're inside the exit, it's a different story, but exit access cannot move through more than one adjacent story.
Leading.
And it's black and white. And there's no place in the code anywhere else where that's allowed. And that's my hang-up. I think that's one or two other people's opinion here on the board. So, we can offer another continuance, I guess. I don't know that that's been done before, or we can vote right now, whatever you'd like us to do.
Yes, sir. I believe that would be our request, would be to go ahead and continue this one more time, if you don't mind, for us having one more opportunity to review this with staff.
Right. And I might add, cost is not an excuse for not meeting the code.
We recognize that both solutions have cost to them.
Right.
Yes, sir.
I understand. Just the write-up had it in there.
And if we do the continuance, then you're saying that you're gonna bring us additional information, or are you just gonna work with the city? Because if the city comes back and approves it, then it won't be coming before us anyway, correct?
I mean, they would have the authority to go ahead and approve it administratively. And if they don't agree with you, then it'll come before us and we'll vote.
Well, I think at this point, we'll request the continuance, we'll work with the city, and if we can get to that point, otherwise, we'll come back and meet again.
I don't know if you can do two continuances.
Fair enough.
Can you do two continuances?
You ever done 2 continuances? I know Scott hasn't, because I haven't.
Well, I do want to say, even if you don't agree with myself or Scott, you can still grant a variance. That's what this board is for, is to make that decision whether you agree with us, you agree with the applicant, you agree with this third-party engineer, whatever it is, that you have that power to accept alternatives, whether you deem those to be acceptable or
And
not.
I can tell you right
And
now, we're
that's-
prepared to vote.
that you don't have to, if they get us to probably agree, they wouldn't need to come here. 'cause
Exactly. And I'm looking specifically
Right.
at paragraph 113.
And this, just to tell you, this building came to this board and got a variance because when they renovated this building, obviously that stair's a problem. It's an old historic stair, and the board did allow it because we're sprinkling and because we're not, different on this one as it is changing the use from, an armory to a hotel and some assembly. But this board did come before this board, did get a variance to allow the exits the way they are because, and mostly because of the historic nature of the building. But just wanted you to know that.
Thank you, Mike.
So we can vote or we can continue.
We made the request for continuance.
Is that fair enough? Do you have a motion to continue?
I'll make a motion to continue.
I'll second that motion.
Vote. Tommy?
Okay, Kyle,
Yes.
Tommy Willis,
Yes.
Jim McWhorter, Ron Roque,
Yes.
Tricia Hatley, Patrice Zimmerman,
Yes.
and Ann Weber.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes to continue.
So before we close, I'd like to recognize the veterans, if there are any veterans here. I'd like to thank you all for your service. I think this country owes a great debt of gratitude to our veterans. So I'd like to recognize them.
I second that.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
I'll second.
Okay, Kyle Lombardo,
Yes.
Tommy Willis,
Yes.
Jim McWhorter, Ron Roque, Tricia Hatley, Patrice Zimmerman,
Yes.
and Ann Weber. Okay, motion passes to adjourn. So if I could have the board members stay just a moment, I've got the books to pass out that were requested. And then if you gentlemen and ladies would like to stay for just a moment as well, I'll talk to you real quick.